Hey knitters, Tonia here. Welcome to another episode of the Nerdy Knitting Podcast. Grab a drink and you're knitting. Let's settle in for a good chat. I have a pile of finished objects to show you and a few new cast-ons, but before we do that, just a few news and updates and little announcements. I was teaching at the Next Level Knitting Conference online this past weekend that's hosted by the Knitting Guild Association. I think they've done it for a few years now, and it went fairly well. It was my first time teaching for another organization besides teaching here on YouTube and my own classes and things. So that was a bit of a challenge. The classes were they were recorded through Zoom, but all of the attendees were on another platform, so you didn't actually have to log in through Zoom if you weren't teaching. And I thought I had everything all sorted out. I don't know if you've ever joined a Zoom meeting, you know, like you can test your microphone and your video and audio and all of that before you get in there. And I cleared all the tests and then I entered the room. Thankfully, they have you start 15 minutes early to make sure everything's working out okay. And I get in there, couldn't hear the other people that are in the group, and they couldn't hear me. So I had like a momentary panic trying to get that sorted out. I had bought a brand new headset just for that reason, to make sure that everything would work okay. And my headset, for some reason, didn't want to work, so I unplugged that, and then there was still no sound, even through like the regular speakers and microphones and things right in the computer. And then I was getting very panicky, so I hollered for my daughter to see if she could come help me. And while I'm jumping up to try to sort things out, I had my water, like I do right here. I knocked it over on the floor. The glass didn't break, thank goodness, but I did not have time to clean up the puddle that was right underneath where I was sitting. So I grabbed a towel and just threw that down behind me. And I did get the audio situation sorted like about 5 minutes before we were supposed to start class. So I was starting out like sort of just, you can probably imagine. I was very flustered because of all of the audio issues and the puddle on the floor by my feet. But I was nervous when I started, and that sort of made things worse. So it took me a bit to sort of settle in to the teaching. And I know I was talking too fast at the beginning because my nerves were still, way up here, and I was trying to calm down while I was teaching. And anyway, I think it went well. I watched a bit of it after just to see if it was really obvious that I was flustered and nervous. And I don't think it was that obvious. It might be to people who are, I don't know, for people who watch the videos every week, they might have noticed a difference. But anyway, so I can look back and laugh at it now. And I did laugh at it after I cleaned up the water, after my session was done. But I called my husband, he wasn't home at the time, and I'm like, well, it went okay. I had audio issues and I spilled water all over the floor right before I started, but he laughed. And now I can say it was funny, At the time it wasn't, oh my word, I was so nervous. But I think the conference went really well. There were lots of great classes, and I still have 6 months of access, so I can go back and watch all of the other classes that I wasn't able to attend. But anyway, I thought you might get a chuckle out of my little situation this past weekend. So yes, I was teaching and I had some flip-flops on, thank goodness. So I wasn't actually my feet weren't sitting right in a puddle of water the whole time, but I could feel it under there. Anyway, I can laugh about it now. And another announcement, I designed a shawl a while ago, and I couldn't share it with you at the time because it was a secret, but I can share it now. I can't share the shawl now, but I can tell you about it. It's a mystery knit along. It's hosted by the Brown Sheep Company using their yarn, their sport weight yarn, Nature Spun Sport, in 3 different colors. 100 grams of 3 different colors, and I'll pop a picture here of some of their color combinations. I use the one in the top left corner, that bulldog blue and that magenta and snow. I use those in the original shawl. So it's a mystery knit along. The first clue just released this past Tuesday, and it's a free pattern. You just have to sign up for their newsletter, and they will send you the next clue every week, and then in 4 weeks you will get the full pattern. So it's totally free. You just have to sign up by email. So I'll put a link down below if you want to join in or just get the pattern. But if you want to join in, there's like a hashtag that you can use on Instagram, and there's an online forum that Brown Sheep hosts, and I'll be popping in there to chat and see if anybody has any questions about the shawl. And I did make some coordinating videos to go along with each one as well. So if you're interested in hopping in and joining a little mystery knit along, it's not too late to join. We are just on the very first clue right now. And now that I've finished the master's program, I can't help but still want to keep learning. Even there's a lot to learn about knitting. We didn't learn everything in the master's program. So now I'm working on the professional knitwear designer course. I do some designing, and that course has helped tremendously. It's taught me how to grade patterns, the different things I need to work on for like design submissions for magazines and things like that. And it's split into 3 modules, and I've been working on the second one. Each one, you work through one and then you send it all in by email, and then you get your feedback and you hear like what you need to improve on or what you need to correct, and get all that sorted, and then you get the next module by email. So I'm on the second module right now, and I have a few more patterns to work on. Actually, I just finished one. I don't actually have to submit the design or even knit the thing. I just have to write a pattern. So I've just finished one. I can't really share too many details because, I mean, it's a paid for course, so I don't want to say what exactly you have to do for it. But there's lots of different components. And my next thing to tackle is the last pattern, which is a garment. I don't have to knit the garment. I just have to write a pattern. So I'm working on that. That's the last thing to do. Hopefully I get that done pretty soon. And then I can get that sent off. It's due. I think we have a year to complete each level, and I'm almost at a year for this level. I've been busy with other things and just never finished. I sort of put the patterns off. Everything else I finished quickly. So I want to get that done and in the mail. Hopefully by the middle of May, I can get that out the door. Then maybe take a bit of a break before I start the 3rd module, or maybe not. And then I'm thinking about what I want to do after that already. Because I like learning. There's so much to learn about knitting. And this was one of the things I talked about in the panel on the weekend, was how that was one thing that the master's program taught me, was you don't really stop learning. There's always something new to discover. There's some new knitting technique that somebody else has developed. There's so many things that you can keep exploring. And I'm really interested in looking more deeply into like the historical side of knitting. But specifically for colorwork sweaters, there's just, and the geography, because they're so different based on where they are. Like a Norwegian sweater is very different from a Fair Isle sweater, which is very different from like a Swedish bohus sweater. So all of these different knitting traditions, but specifically colorwork, because I'd like to improve my colorwork skills as well. I mean, I did pass the master's program, so I know that I can do it, but there's a difference between like knitting a project for the program because you're so careful trying to do things so neatly, and then just knitting. That I know when I'm just knitting, my stranded colorwork is not as nice and neat as it was for the program, because I really took a lot of time and effort, and I think I knit the hat 3 times before I submitted one because I just wanted it to be perfect. So I'd like to improve my knitting skills when it comes to colorwork, and I'd like to explore those different colorwork techniques from different locations. So that might be what I do after I finish this program. So I need to get module 3 done first. So maybe that's sort of my incentive to get that finished so I can do that. And I haven't really sorted out all of the details yet. I don't know if I want to necessarily knit sweaters that will fit me, because I'm larger. I have a larger bust, and then I've got to deal with like making bust darts and the extra shaping that's involved. Or if I just want to like find a vintage pattern, a vintage stranded colorwork pattern, and knit that without making a bunch of alterations, because vintage patterns do not come in larger sizes, so I'd have to do a lot of extra work. So I'm thinking I might just knit it to fit the mannequin behind me, because it's more of an exercise and a study into those colorwork methods and the designs and things like that, and not so much in fitting a sweater to my body, which would be a lot more work. And I don't know. I'm still thinking about that. And it could turn into a whole series. If I can do a few sweaters a year, I can make some videos about the history of each location. And I don't know. It's sort of still percolating in my mind for that part. But that's it for announcements. But of course, I like to talk about what I'm watching and reading, and we've done a lot of announcements, so I think we'll skip that this week. But I do want to share a knitting resource. Pretty sure I've shared this one in the past, back when we did some live streams, but I wanted to mention it again because I'm talking about colorwork knitting today. And this book, the Essential Guide to Color Knitting Techniques by Margaret Radcliffe, and we'll go take a little peek at that. So this book by Margaret Radcliffe is one that I used a lot during the master's program, and it covers lots of different knitting techniques. It includes stranded knitting, intarsia, mosaic, shadow knitting, entrelac, double knitting. Plus, the first few sections are so helpful if you're thinking of ways to use variegated yarn, because sometimes it can be difficult to figure out what to do. They look so pretty in a skein, and then you knit them up and it doesn't really look the way you wanted it to, or the way you thought it would. So lots of different ideas for using variegated yarns, adding some texture, things like that. But here is the table of contents. And it's just full of like beautiful photographs and lots of techniques. Like here you can see there's some stitch patterns, slip stitch designs, and it includes charts and written instructions for those. Then just lots of helpful information with good tutorials. And I just love, it covers so many different colorwork knitting topics, like the basic ones, you know, like you'd expect to see stranded knitting and intarsia, mosaic, and slip stitch knitting. But then it dives into like double knitting too, and shadow knitting, which is not like such a huge popular thing like stranded knitting is. But there's some pages on the stranded knitting. So lots of charts and stitch patterns if you want to explore that. But then lots of good information on techniques. Oh, here's some on intarsia. I referenced this quite a lot when I was working on level 2 and level 3, I believe. Helix knitting. It's a sturdy book. There's a lot in here. There's a few patterns as well. Just lots of great information and a great glossary. Margaret Radcliffe's books, I have quite a few of them, and I like every single one. They are just packed full of good information. And if you like to do colorwork knitting of any kind, or if you want to explore different types of colorwork, then this is, like, I would say, the go-to resource, because it dives into all of them, plus more than you would think, like just talking about how to use variegated yarn and multicolored yarns as well, along with all of the techniques. So it's a really great resource. Before we get to that pile of finished objects, I just want to share about this month's sponsor, which is Alley Cat Yarns, a yarn dyer based here in Canada. She is in Ontario, a small dye company, and some of my favorite yarns, especially her BFL, her Blue Face Leicester sock yarn. I really love that yarn for knitting socks. BFL is great because it's a little more sturdy than merino. I have to do a few extra things to make sure my merino socks don't wear out, but her merino yarn too, Smooth Sock, is really fabulous if you love soft merino yarns. And that is what we'll be giving away today. So you'll want to stick around to the end when we talk about the giveaway. But right now it's just about Alley Cat Yarns. And I'll link to her website and her Instagram down below. Now, she's got some fabulous yarns that you're not going to find with other yarn dyers. Sometimes the small dyers, you know, they all sort of buy from the same few sources, so the bases start to look the same. Well, Alley Cat Yarns has lots of different sources, so she's got different yarns that you're not going to find at a lot of these other small dye businesses. All of her yarn is ethically sourced. She looks for suppliers who are certified for standards in animal welfare and environmental stewardship, or traceable small family farms that she has personally investigated. She's also very interested in using breed-specific yarns that you'll probably won't find with a lot of other dyers. She's done Blue Face Leicester, like I've mentioned, Merino, Shetland, Dorset, Cheviot, Polworth, Silk, Cashmere, Linen, Corriedale, and Yak. So you just have to keep checking her website because she's coming out with new and different things all of the time. And I've used the Leo BFL sock, which I really like, and her Smooth Sock, which is merino, which is so soft and lovely. And I've designed a wrap using her silk and linen blend as well, which I really like, and it's perfect for airy, drapey, summer type things. And I have other things on my list. She has a British Breeds DK that I would really like to try. Ontario sock, which is a non-superwash wool blend and it uses mohair for added strength. I'd like to give that one a try as well. But anyway, thank you to Alley Cat Yarns for sponsoring this month's video, and be sure to stick around because we're going to be doing a giveaway with some of her yarn at the end. Now, since we're talking about Alley Cat Yarns, that will be the first thing I'm going to show. I have been working on a bias knit wrap, which still doesn't have a name, but I did ask on the YouTube community if anybody had any ideas. There were so many great ideas, I can't even narrow it down yet. I've got to sit and look through them, and then I might do a poll with some of my favorites to see which one you like the best. I'll put a picture here that I shared there. I hung it up on our coat rack by the door, and the light was just perfect, and it just looks beautiful there. But there's also, along with the wrap, there is a scarf size that will be included. This is a 2 skein scarf. It's quite long, but I like a nice long scarf that I can wrap around my neck. And I know that sometimes, you know, people like just a little scarf, and it just is beautifully drapey in this linen silk yarn. So this is the scarf size, and they're both knit exactly the same. You start out, I don't know which end is the beginning and which is the end, but you start at one point and you increase along both edges until you get to the width that you want. And then you're increasing and decreasing, increasing at one edge, decreasing at the other. So that gives you the shape, like the length of your shawl, but it also gives you that bias shaping. Oh, I can see my ends coming through right there. And that's the other thing. This is completely reversible because I have an I-cord edge and it's knit 2, purl 2, rib. So it's reversible. So you want to be very careful when you're weaving in your ends. I'll see if I can, there we go. Hide that end. So now you can't even see it. So it is totally reversible. Then when it's as long as you want, and can I say I just like the way the rib sort of goes sideways when you do that bias knitting. When it's as long as you want, and it's quite long for this, you start decreasing at both sides, and that gets you to the other point. So nice little scarf for those who like a little lightweight scarf. Sometimes you don't want a big wrap because it's not that chilly, but you just want a little something. But if you do want a nice big wrap, oh, this one was in her goldenrod colorway, beautiful yellow color. This one is platinum, and I love this color. It's just got that little, it's sort of a silvery bit of a sheen to it because of the silk. So it's the same pattern, just 4 skeins instead of 2. So you get this lovely wrap. I'll put a picture here because that does it a better justice, I think, than trying to hold it up to look at. But it's the same exact thing, just knit 2, purl 2, rib, but done on the bias, so you get the stripes going sideways. And just, oh, I already like it, and I'm hoping our anniversary is coming up and we're thinking of just hopping in the car and driving to the coast for a few days. And I'll probably take this along and maybe get some pictures, you know, with like the ocean as the backdrop. That would be really nice. This feels like something you just want to wear on a chilly ocean beach day or something, but which seemed to be a lot of the comments when I was asking about names. They all sort of to be like beach or related somehow. But lots of great name ideas. If you have any ideas for this, I haven't named it yet, then you can leave it down below. And yeah, there's so many good names. I think I'm gonna have to narrow it down and then do a poll to see what everybody thinks, because I couldn't decide. And we finished our 6-month exploration into socks. Every month we talked about a different sock topic. We had a different sock tutorial. We talked about different sock yarns and sock patterns. That I think I need a little bit of a break from socks before we dive into knitting toe-up socks. But I'm not going to be doing like we did, like the whole month would be devoted to socks every video except for our monthly podcast. But I think when we do our toe-up sock tutorials, we've already talked about everything we could possibly talk about, how to fit socks properly and how to care for them and all that it's not going to be like months devoted to socks. It'll just be sort of the tutorial for that month will be about socks. Everything else will be different topics. But our last sock tutorial was using, what did we use? 2 circulars. Completely slipped my mind there. We did socks on 2 circular needles. And instead of our standard stockinette and different rib patterns, I wanted to do something a little different. So we did a little panel of lace down the front instead. So plain stockinette sock, panel of lace, and then for our heel and our toe, we did a sweet tomato heel. And then the toe shaping, was an anatomical toe. So there is very specific right and left toes. You can see it sort of slants very quickly or very slowly here, and then really quick curve right there. And then the other sock, of course, is reversed. This side slants that way, and then we have a quick curve there. So that is the sock tutorial for the month. I'll put a link for that down below if that's interesting to you. Now, 2 circulars. I had never done that before. It was my first time using that method. Really simple. Not much different than magic loop. And I thought that it would be more finicky because you'd have 2 circular needles instead of just 1. But I think I actually like it more than magic loop. For some reason, it doesn't feel as finicky. I don't know why. I haven't figured that out in my brain. There's something about turning it, and with magic loop, the way you have to readjust everything feels like more work than it did with 2 circulars. And I was even using long circulars. I had like a 40-inch circular, and I think the other was a 32-inch, so which are quite long for knitting a single sock. I was thinking a 24-inch would be appropriate. Somebody left a comment saying that they like to use 16-inch circulars for the 2 circulars method when they're doing a sock, which I don't love 16-inch. Even for hats, they feel, I don't know, not quite right. So I'm not sure I would like a 16-inch, but I was very surprised that I liked it as much as I did. But anyway, that's it for these socks. Really great heel, the Sweet Tomato heel by Kat Bordy, who has sadly passed away, but she's left us with some amazing knitting knowledge, and her Sweet Tomato heel is one of them. Now this one, if you're a heel flap and gusset person because you know it fits you better than a short row heel, you should give this heel a try, because I was that person. I like a heel flap and gusset. I think it fits my foot better. I have a really high instep, and short row heels sometimes feel very tight across the instep because they're just not big enough in that area. Well, a Sweet Tomato heel, the standard one that uses 3 wedges, and you actually include some of those instep stitches in the heel, so it's bigger and it's deeper because it has those 3 wedges instead of just 2, that it just fits really nicely. It looks a little weird because it comes all the way down here. And then like my foot, I actually had to knit shorter than I usually do because the heel comes down so far, but it fits very well. So if you're one of those high instep people who find that short row heels don't fit as well, you might want to give this one a try and see if it changes your mind. Not all short rows are going to work the same way, and these are surprisingly very well fitting for those of us with wide heels and high insteps. My Christmas shawl is done. This is the Lilli Pilli pattern by Ambah O'Brien. Uses 3 skeins of fingering or sock weight yarn. This one's knit on the bias as well. It's just a big rectangle, and I like good big rectangle shawls. I prefer them to triangles. I just like the way they fit me, and I can wear them like a scarf. I can wrap up in them. So this one, let me see, it starts on this end. So you cast on over here, and you're working on the bias, 2 color stripes, just garter stitch, and then you introduce a section of lace in a 3rd color. Go back to your garter stitch stripes for a while and finish with a little more lace. Now, of course, she has her recommended yarn. I used a Knit Picks Muse. I think this one here, the color is called Poetic, and then Hawthorne, Cobbler, Speckle, and Hayden for my stripes. And it was yarn I had put in my basket when Knit Picks was having their sale last November for Christmas. I just put a whole bunch of things in there and told my husband to, if he wanted to just click order or add other things. And it was originally 3 colors that I included because I wanted to knit like a fade shawl, but when I had the colors in person all laid out, I had 6 skeins. I did not like the way they looked together for a fade, so I divided them up and I chose 3 for this shawl instead, and I really think it came out very nice, and I like the colors together. There's enough of that little purple from the lace mixed in here that I feel like it fits very well. And it's a nice big shawl. Of course, it's getting a little too warm now for shawls, but it'll be perfect in the winter. Now, the next thing off my needles is a little garter stitch crescent shawl. This uses 2 skeins of DK weight yarn. I use November Kin Classic DK. The color is called Ice Skates. Novemberkin yarn. She's a yarn dyer here in Canada as well. And you can see some of the garter crescent shawl, short row shaping. So for this one, I cast on right at the bottom edge where the design is down here, sort of a loopy, lacy cast on. And then I did this very simple garter stitch lace. Like, it's just kind of reminds me of feather and fan. And then after I'd done a few repeats of that, I went right into just basic garter stitch. Then I added some short rows in there, so you get sort of a crescent shape. Like, it's narrower out at the sides than it is in the center. So little 2 skein shawlette. And I think this pattern will be coming out sometime this summer maybe. So the last thing off my needles is a Coco Knits sweater. This was also a Christmas gift, this book and enough yarn to knit a tunic length cardigan. And I way overestimated the amount of yarn I was going to need. I put that in my shopping basket online for my husband too. I used Knit Picks Wool of the Andes Bulky in spruce, really lovely green color. And just, yeah, I put way too much yarn in there. I wasn't sure with a tunic length cardigan and how big, like if I was going to add a lot of extra shaping to the bottom to make it more roomy. And I just bought way too much yarn. I think I had 6 skeins, or 5 skeins left. I ordered 12. I only needed like half of that amount. So I have another project that I'm using that. It's on the needles right now. So we'll talk about that one next. But this sweater, the yarn is really warm. It's not soft, but I don't mind that in a cardigan. I mean, I'm not wearing it next to my skin, maybe my arms, and I don't care too much on my arms. But it's not a tightly spun yarn, so I'm getting some pilling already under, like, sort of where my arm rubs against my bust. So, but I expect it's going to be one of those cardigans I wear a lot because it's very warm. And I was hoping to knit it over Christmas break. I never got around to it. I didn't get to it till Easter weekend, hoping, now I was thinking if I can get it done quickly, then I can have it at least for, chilly mornings. And it has been pretty chilly and rainy here, so I've been getting some use out of it, hence the pilling. So this is a top-down sweater construction that gives you set-in sleeves. And it starts by casting on at the back neck. So you cast on for basically this part right here, just right along there, and then you're knitting right along this part, just the upper back. Then you pick up stitches for each of the fronts along that line right there. It really produces this nicely tailored finish. So you're picking up like stitches for the right and the left fronts, whether it's cardigan or a pullover, and you knit those two, and then you like increase to do your sleeves as well. Let me see right there. And it's really just a neat, very interesting construction. Very not hard to do, but very precise and specific. And the book is fabulous because she spells it out really well. Lots of great photos that walk you through all of these techniques. And she's very good at like doing the fine finishing so things look nice, which I'm learning I really appreciate in a garment. I find that I'm drawn to garments. Well, I like color. If I see lots of color, I'm excited about that. But when I see like the little details, you're going to see that in like the garment summer t-shirt I'm working on now. It's big on tiny details that make a really tailored finish. And the Coco Knits method is like that. I didn't change anything about the cast on and doing the shoulders or anything like that. I did add more stitches at the underarm, and she talks about in the pattern as well if you want to add more ease in the bust. I didn't want more ease in my shoulders. I'll put a video up here after that shows you how it fits. It fits really well at the top, which is what I wanted, but I did want ease in my bust. I didn't want it to be super tight. Didn't want it to be super oversized either. Just something I can throw on in the morning. But I did add a few more, I think 4 stitches at each underarm that I added there to add a bit more ease. And I also shortened the sleeves. I have a long torso, but I have short arms, so I shortened it by 3.5 inches, which is quite a lot, but they fit me. They hit right at my wrist, which is just what I wanted. Now I changed the waist shaping as well. The pattern calls for it to be down the sides, which you can see right here. You You can see the increases worked right there, or the waist to hip. Like I wanted more space in my hip. So I used some that she had in the pattern, and I also added more there, but I also added some in the back. I did some decreases after the bust, and then I did some increases to get down to the hip. So I had the waist shaping there, but just along the back. You can see that in the video as well. Sort of like princess seams like you'd see in a shirt. My only problem is now that I notice when I'm wearing it that they sit lower than they should. They're more almost like sitting right on my hip instead of, or the back of my bum, like right at the top of my bum instead of up higher where my waist actually is. But I'm not really, I mean, it's just around the house. If it bothered me, then I would rip it out and do it again, but it doesn't really bother me. It's okay. But yes, I should have paid more attention about where the placement for that waist shaping was in the back. So I think that was it for my changes. Like I mentioned, I had lots of yarn left over. I think 5, maybe 5.5 skeins of yarn from that cardigan. I way over purchased, and even if I used some for some pockets, I had a ton left. So I'm thinking, what am I going to do with all of this bulky yarn? So I was doing some searching, and I happened across a pattern for a felted bag. And I thought, oh, I haven't done any sort of felting projects, and that's been something I've thought about trying. And I had looked at a bunch of Cindy Pilon's bags. Now, you go find her on Ravelry. She has a ton of felted bags. That seems to be like her specialty. So I perused a bunch of them and found one that I think I have enough yarn for. I didn't even check my gauge though, but so far I think it's going to be working out just fine. You can see how giant it is right now. You start at the bottom, you knit the base of the bag in garter stitch, and then you pick up stitches all the way around and then start knitting in the round to get your bag shape. And there's also going to be some pockets on the side. I'll pop a picture here of what the finished one is going to look like. So you put some purl stitches sort of to outline where that pocket's going to be. So I've done that part. I'm working on the top of the bag now, which you sort of do a bit of shaping to close it up. I don't think I want it to be as closed as the original because I'm probably going to use it as just a knitting bag. So I don't want it to be, it looks a little small in the top, and I want it to be wider in the top. So I might stop the decreases in a few rows. The hard part is once you felt it, if you don't like it, you're kind of stuck. So I really have to think about what changes I want to make because I can't undo them after the fact. But it's coming along pretty easy. I'm at the top now. I just have to finish the top, think about how I want to do my decreases, and then I've got the straps and the pockets to do, and then decide how I'm going to felt this. But I'm looking forward to that. It is 100% wool, and I mean, I've been spit splicing as I've gone along with both my cardigan and this. Like when I'd get to the end of one ball of yarn, I would just join them, get the yarn wet, and felt it quickly, and then just keep going. And it felted really quickly and easily. So I don't think it's going to be a problem to felt this bag, but I am looking forward to giving that a try. And I've already got a few more of her designs on my wish list because if I like this, I might do it again. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun to design it or knit my own bags like that and then felt them. Now the last thing on my needles is a new top for this summer. I'm using the DK Weight Cotton yarn from Knit Picks, which I thought was going to work just fine for this pattern. The pattern called for 22 stitches to 4 inches, and so did this yarn, so I thought it'd be a good substitute. I swatched with it. I swatched in a bunch of different needle sizes, and even with her recommended, I'm still not getting 22 stitches. I think I'm closer to 19 and a half maybe. And I wasn't even down on the smallest. I think it was a US 4. I wasn't even meeting gauge, and I did not like the fabric at all. I want like a nice light flowy summer top, and I didn't want to do like that's a size 4, and it looks all right, but it feels tight. I didn't like the way it felt. I really like the fabric on the US 6. So that was my first thing, was okay, my gauge does not match at all. I already bought 12 skeins of yarn. Can't really return it at this point, so I'm going to make it work. So I'm using not a rule, but there is a thing that you can do. You can take your gauge and then decide on like your finished circumference. Like I know what I wanted to fit around my bust. So I take my 1-inch stitch gauge, multiply it by that measurement, and that gives me like the stitch count, the approximate stitch count I need to have on the full circumference of that sweater. So at that point, I go to the pattern, and of course it's knit in the top down. You're starting with the shoulders, so I'm not using that cast on number. I look for the number where it's joined in the round and it's going to be knit around the bust. I look for that number and I find the size that's closest to the number I'd like to have. I think I was just a few stitches off with the size 6. So I'm following the instructions for the 6th size, but following the instructions, following that stitch count, but my gauge is completely different. So that's something you can try. I can't guarantee it's always going to work, but depending on what you're working on, it can. You have to be willing to pull things out and readjust and make some changes as you go, but it can work. So all you're doing is taking your stitch gauge, multiplying it by the circumference you would like to have. That gives you the number of stitches you should have. So then you go check that pattern, find the size that has approximately that number of stitches, and that's the size you follow. And of course, you're going to have to make changes, like my armhole depth. I'll pop a video here. I'm at the recommended depth according to the pattern. My row gauge is different as well, but like other patterns, it tells you how many inches your armhole depth should be. So I followed that and tried it on, and I think it will fit, but it's a bit on the tight side. So I'm going to knit a few more rows, I think, before I join to work in the round. So you have to stop and make adjustments like that. Thankfully, the pre-block and post-block measurements aren't too far apart. So if they were, then I would put all of this on waste yarn and wash it like I'm going to wash my finished garment, try it on to make sure. But I don't think I have to do that. My gauge measurements were pretty much the same before and after blocking. So I'm not going to bother with that, but I think I'm going to knit a few more rows. So it's working out well so far using this 6th size. My measurements are not the same body measurements as this finished garment, but it's working out because of my gauge. It matches up just fine. So I'm really liking the details in this garment as well. It's got that vertical braid worked across the shoulders and across the back neck. It's got these slipped stitches that it looks so nicely tailored and finished that I was really drawn to that. I mean, it's really simple. There's no major complicated stitch patterns. It's just plain stockinette stitch, but I just like how tailored and finished it looks. So that's why I chose this pattern. So that's everything that's on my needles. I have some upcoming ideas. I've got some yarn here to work on a new cardigan. The Rose cardigan by Andrea Mowry. It's knit like sideways from wrist to the center, and then you do the other side too. And I got bare yarn, so I'm going to dye it myself to create my own sort of fade. That's going to be my summer project, I think. And I also have another summer top I want to work on after I finished Westbound, Marquis by Jennifer Beal. That one has some lace along the shoulders and along the side, so a little more going on. But I also bought the same type of yarn, Cotton, in another color. And I'm going to have the same issue with this one as I do with Westbound, that my gauge is not the same. So I have to think about how to do that one because the construction's a little different. You start with the shoulder pieces and then do the fronts and the backs from that. So you have to keep watching because that'll probably be in the next podcast. Hopefully by then I've cast that one on and I've finished my Westbound. But that is all that's upcoming as well. And the last thing to do, of course, is our giveaway. And now Alley Cat Yarns has provided some beautiful yarn. This is her smooth sock, which is 85% superwash merino, 15% nylon in these really fun colors. This one is fur. I used this one, I think, in her BFL base. It's a lovely green. And then this one's chartreuse, and I just love that bold yellow. And they look really nice together. So 2 skeins of yarn from Alley Cat Yarns, a cute little cat pin, and some stitch markers as well. So this is what you can win. It's going to be open worldwide. Now to enter the giveaway, you don't have to go anywhere. I will put Alley Cat Yarns info down below so you can go check out the website, go check out her Instagram, but I'm going to just put up a little screen share right now of some of the different colors. Just pop a comment telling me which color is your favorite. That's not the color you're getting. You're going to be getting fur and chartreuse if you win, but tell me what color you like. From the ones that you can see on your screen right now. Now, I will be randomly selecting a winner using a random comment generator, and I will be looking for comments that include one of those yarn colors, so tell me what you like. And for the fine print, this video is not sponsored or endorsed by YouTube in any way. I'm hosting the giveaway. Alley Cat Yarns provided the yarn for this, so YouTube has no sponsorship or endorsement at all. It's just me, Alley Cat Yarns, and I will be shipping the yarn to the winner. So this giveaway is open until May 3rd, and then on May 3rd, I will be checking the comments and using a random comment generator to choose a winner. And watch, hopefully you have notifications turned on, because I will leave a comment for the person who wins telling them that they won and that they need to contact me. Now, I have my comment things set with filters, so other spammers can't leave comments about winning giveaways. If the word giveaway shows up in a comment, nobody can post it unless I approve it first. That's just to keep spammers away. So if you see my Nerdy Knitting logo and name with saying that you won and that I need your mailing address, and I share my email address where you can send it to me, it's not a spam. It's really me. I have those filters set so you can't get spam that way. So you have to have notifications turned on though. I did have somebody who won. I left a comment. I did not hear back from them, so I had to choose somebody else. So I have to make sure that you can get the responses to your comment turned on. And I can't really tell you how to do that here. You have to go look and make sure your notifications are set for that. But anyway, if you want to enter the giveaway, you can pick a color, leave me a comment about your favorite color from Alley Cat Yarns Smooth Sock, and I will choose a winner next Wednesday, May 2nd or 3rd. I think it was the 3rd. And that is it for this episode of the Nerdy Knitting Podcast. We will see you at the end of next month and with more knitting goodness. And if you'd like to catch up on past episodes, I'll put a playlist right here. You can click right there and I'll see you in the next video.